Exactly 2 years ago, I published my most viewed Valorant video ever titled 20 Valorant Tips I Wish I Knew When I Started Playing. You might have seen it. This is where I broke down exactly everything that I had learned on my climb from Iron to Immortal throughout my hundreds of hours of playing Valorant. My goal was to save you guys time so that you wouldn't just queue into games mindlessly hoping that you would just magically improve at the game. Over my years as a content creator, I've seen thousands of videos that just tell you the most recycled information that you hear in every single video. And honestly, I pride myself on always being able to add my own unique twist onto every single video that I create. Whether you hate me or love me, my goal is to make it so everyone who watches one of my videos at least learns one thing new or is introduced to a new way of thinking that they have never thought of before themselves. So today, 2 years later, as the game has been evolving at one of the fastest rates that we've ever seen, I wanted to provide with you 20 new Valorant tips that I wish I knew when I started playing after having nearly thousands of hours of playing now. I feel like these tips would have made all of the difference in my Valorant climb, and I want to share them with you. Some of these tips might contradict things that I've said in my past videos, and you know what? That's okay. Just as the game has changed, so has my perspective, and that's actually my first tip. With anything in life, Valorant included, you should be very okay with the idea of being wrong. This is especially important in Valorant because every time that you do something stupid, you're probably going to get called out by a teammate in a not so nice way. Now, don't get me wrong, you shouldn't ever just blindly trust your teammates in ranked. There's a high likelihood anything your teammates tell you in ranked is just completely incorrect, especially if you are in the lower ranks. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about it. I'm someone who gets pretty defensive when called out. However, something I always do when I'm accused of being wrong is after the fact, I will think about the situation and come to my own conclusions. There's been plenty of times I've been called out by a player for making a mistake, thought about it afterwards, and determined that there was some truth in what they were saying. That being said, I've been playing a lot of League of Legends lately, and I'm currently Gold 1. So I just want to try to relate to a bunch of lower elo players here for the moment. Why is it that every single Gold player seems to genuinely believe that they are good at the game? I will be harassed for an entire match because of one perceived mistake that I made in a game, but at the end of the day, we are all Gold. Nobody here is going pro. It's not like we're pushing the envelope when it comes to skill in League of Legends. Can we please have a little bit of humility and just accept that we have a lot to learn? Anyway, though, I digress. Tip number 1, never stop learning. Tip number 2 may get some pushback from players, but if I could go back to day 1, I'd pretty much only pick Jett for my first 1,000 hours of play. That's a lot of time, so let me talk about that a bit more. The reason for this is that duelists are encouraged to take duels, and agents with dismiss abilities like Jett Stash inspire confidence because you literally have a get out of jail free card. Now, there is a problem with this as well. Having a get out of jail free card often encourages bad habits because you don't really need to think about what fights you're going to take. You can just get away with swinging anything. This is why you'll see so many stupid duelist players who really don't know how the game works. They just don't get punished for making mistakes. We'll talk about that more in tip number 3, but can I just be real with you guys for a second? I've brought this up on Twitter before, but the other reason I recommend playing Duelist just has to do with how vile the community is at times. You see, by nature in Valorant, duelists will get more kills, which is fine on the surface. That's just how the game works. Initiators are meant to use their utility to help duelists get kills, and duelists are meant to use their utility to help duelists get kills. This doesn't mean an agent like Jett doesn't serve any purpose to a team, but a Sova recon can help everyone, while a Jett dash only really helps Jett help her team. It's a selfish role, and because of this, duelists on average have higher KDAs than support players. This is a real stat, you can look it up. But who is the first person that you blame on your team when you start losing? Normally it's the bottom frag. By playing duelists, you will bottom frag less, meaning you won't be the target of just blatant harassment in your matches due to how many kills you have. Not only that, but you'll probably just have more fun because you'll get more kills. Have you ever tried playing an agent like Breach without any teamwork? It kinda sucks. Every time I'm on a no-comm team playing Initiator, I'm wondering why I didn't just pick Yoru and play for myself. It really disappoints me that my point of view has shifted this much because I love playing a supportive role for my team. But if I went back in time and wanted to improve faster while having the most fun in matchmaking, I would probably just be a Jett main from the start. Let's talk about tip number 3 though, which is another main part of this. Aim is the most important thing in Valorant. These tips go together because it's really hard to build up good aim and confidence if you don't take fights. Playing Duelist rewards taking fights, and taking more fights will make you better at taking fights. Make sense? This has become more and more obvious the higher rank that I get. The unfortunate thing about Valorant is that in matchmaking, there's not really a lot of strategy involved. This isn't to say that there aren't things you can do to make life significantly easier. However, if there is a clear aim difference between you and your opponents, more often than not, the team with the better aim is the one that will win. They can just do whatever they want and get away with it. It's like playing Monopoly with somebody who just keeps stealing money from the bank every time they need it. You can't beat them. They're literally robbing the bank. As we mentioned earlier, these Duelist players will swing everything, which isn't very smart. However, if you can't punish them for swinging everything, they will get infinite value out of it, hence robbing the bank. They'll get tons of info, tons of space, and tons of kills from it. You need to be able to go toe-to-toe with these players, otherwise you will never be able to punish their mistakes and will always lose to them. That's why our Aim God course is designed to teach you everything that you need to know about aiming so that you can skip the part where you look like this and get to the part where you look like this. The thing is, it's not that difficult to actually get elite level aim, you just need to know the fundamentals and how to apply them. According to our studies, on average, it takes players over 1,000 ranked games before they ever hit Diamond. That's nearly 700 hours of playtime. You could climb on your own, but you're never going to get that time back. With SkillCapped, we could cut that in half for you. Instead, you'll skip through the learning stages as fast as possible and start climbing tomorrow. And the best part is, if you don't climb while using our service, we'll literally just give you your money back. So if you're feeling hard stuck, or maybe you just don't want to waste your time in Elo Hell, check out SkillCapped using that link below for a discount, and we will see you there. Moving on to tip number 4, probably one of the most basic habits that you can have that most players still don't apply. If you see 5 players on the map at any point in time, you know that they have given up all map control on the other side of the map. You should instantly look to take that space the moment you locate all 5 players and know that it's safe. Especially as a defender, don't just rotate through spawn, go straight through mid and take all of the free space the attackers have given up. This is part of your fundamentals. It's just something you should do when you see 5 players. That will rarely be a bad decision. So in our last video, I talked about how Valorant is a game that is meant to be perfected. Think about same maps, same angles, same agents. At each round's start, the barriers come down and you take the same duels and you just practice this over and over and get better and better each time at taking those fights or pushing those sites. It is a super repetitive game, so it's meant to be perfected. Because of this though, that means that pattern recognition is a massive part of playing Valorant, which is something that I never really mentioned in these videos. The thing is, after you put in thousands of hours into Valorant, everything feels like deja vu. Every day I'm still learning new things, but for the most part, every match feels more or less the same. It's hard to catch me off guard with something that I haven't seen before, and most teams play the exact same way, so much so that it becomes pretty predictable. This is exactly something that we talk about in our recent wall hacks course on our website. At the start of the round, there are standard positions that teams will play and tells for where each player is and how they're going to reposition in the round. When I was really new to the game, I actually reached out to professional coach and analyst Sean Garris to ask him about how players seemingly are able to run teams over in matchmaking so quickly in the round, and this is what he told me. The people in ranked that run it down typically have really good ways to deal with standard setups. What you have to realize is that ranked isn't like a team scrim. When the teams spawn, they play default spots almost always, so they know where fights are and speed up super quickly. It's actually super important that these players are able to frag out quickly in the round too, because based on the timing in the round, there's a lot more options for your opponents. Those standard positions they were in at the start of the round quickly start to have more options. They could have flanked, they could be rotating over, they could still be hanging around. The more time they have, the more variance in their play. That's exactly what our course aims to teach you though. We'll show you all of the standard positions on every map and how to abuse them. This is essential if you want to hard carry your matches, so we highly recommend checking it out. This next tip is crucial though, so listen up. You need to know when the most important thing for you to do is stay alive. There are going to be times in Valorant when you are in such a good position that literally you just staying alive is more important than landing any kills. If you are flanking and have 5 players contained in one area, you need to just play a rat angle to guarantee that you're not going to die for free. If you're holding a significant amount of map control and die, the floodgates are going to be opened and your opponents can go anywhere. Remember, your goal is to contain, not to kill. Too often, players just don't know their value of staying alive. Your life is so important, and the moment that you die, you lose all impact in the round. So you need to be sure that you get enough value while you're alive to put your team in a position to win before you end up dying. There are ways to have value even after you die though. For number 7, plainly put, communication is the easiest way to get consistent value. Some days you just won't be able to aim, but you can always have good communication, so it's something that you should strive for in every single match. I don't know about you guys, but I'm so tired of seeing bottom frag arena players who don't say a word. Almost worse than them not speaking actually is them complaining and apologizing the whole game about not being able to aim today. There's a stigma surrounding Reyna that she just can only be useful when getting kills, which is partly true due to her toolkit, but you can still have a massive impact even as a bottom frag Reyna if you just help your team take space and communicate effectively. Literally just run in, throw your leers, get traded, and talk to your teammates. That's all that we ask. I will never be mad at a player for having a bad aim day, but if you ignore us the whole match and don't say a single word, yeah, I'm going to never want to play with you again. Ironically, I actually feel like my round win rate goes up when I die early enough in the round to guide my teammates because I'm able to think more clearly. I will be able to quickly see all the mistakes that my teammates are making and guide them to a more successful retake or post plans. I see that my Omen has blind available and that we have smokes and my Reyna has a leer and then my Sova has a recon, and I'm like wondering why is nobody calling this stuff out. Sometimes when I die, it's like I start playing a verbal RTS to guide my teammates on a retake. I'm just guiding all of my units into the bomb site so that we can win. Some of you might think that this is backseating, but this actually brings up tip number 8, which is good comms are not backseating. When your team is setting up for a retake, they need to be talking to each other. That is how the game works. If I see my team approaching a retake and my Omen isn't telling anyone that he has blind and how he wants to use it, that is an issue. If my teammates are in a 2v1 and they're not communicating how they're going to play it, that's a problem. You need to get good at reading your teammates and calling out the things that they're too bad to call out themselves. It's not even just that though. Oftentimes if you're dialed in, you're just not going to be able to make these comms in the moment. If Demon 1 is fighting 5 players at once, ducking in and out of cover, he doesn't want to have to key up to scream, "Help me!" The man is focused. Someone else can easily see that he needs help and call for a flash or a flood or a smoke or something to help this man out. Do be mindful if you see 2 players in a clutch, they might be talking in Discord if they're duoed, but oftentimes you can tell if they're communicating just by how they play it. Too many players are afraid of talking while they're dead because it will be viewed as backseating. But if you're saying things that are actually helpful, it's not backseating and nobody is going to yell at you. I talk a lot when I'm dead, and not once have I ever been yelled at for backseating. And you know what? On the occasion that I do catch myself talking when I shouldn't, I just apologize because just like for tip number 1, sometimes you mess up. Moving on, tip number 9 is the secret to getting insane aim in Valorant. It's something that can easily take your aim from 0 to 100 in the shortest amount of time possible. If I could go back to when I first started playing Valorant, I'd make sure that I committed to aim training every single day for 30 minutes a day. I've done aim training before, but I pretty much have always let my routine slip through at one point or another. Whether that was a month or a week, it didn't matter, but every single time I started aim training, I immediately started to notice the benefits in my aim. It's something that can never hurt your aim, so even if it's something that you don't necessarily believe in, if you have the time, I recommend that you try it. And don't stop. Just because you hit Immortal doesn't mean your aim can't get better. In fact, I would argue that this is where you need it the most. Getting that extra 1% of rank is one of the most difficult things to do. In one of our recent studies that we ran on the channel, we found that the average Radiant player had nearly double the amount of playtime of Ascendant and Immortal players. Nearly double. That is absolutely insane. Remember, the best part to start aim training was 10 years ago, but the second best time is now. For tip number 10, I wanted to talk about the best information gathering tool in the game that literally every single agent has. And that's your ears. Yay, woo! No, but really, you can gather so much information at the start of the round by just standing in good spots. Especially in low elo, players just run everywhere that they go, so you can gather tons of information by literally just listening. On every map, there's different locations where you can stand to immediately listen for enemies at the start of the round. If you're playing an agent like Sova, oftentimes this means that you don't need to recon for info. You can just save it for when they run in because you will already hear them at the start of the round anyway. For example, I like to stand next to the spawn barrier on C Long Haven because I can listen for info from both outside of Garage as well as C Long. You'll hear right away if the attackers are pushing C, and if you don't hear anything, most of the time you can actually just walk up and take the space for free. This is really good for Duelists for playing C because this is generally going to provide your team a ton of value if you're able to take this space. Or from B Heaven on Split, you can hear Market and B Main. It's literally free info, so take advantage of it. Normally you'll realize the offense doesn't make any attempt to mask their movements, and you can just decide in the first 4 seconds of the round if they're going to hit site or not. It sounds like a small trick because it is, but trust me, this stuff is overpowered in ranked. Give it a shot. Tip number 11 is something that I came around to recently, but have you ever thought about how each map is meant to be played? Everyone recognizes that the maps are different, obviously, but what makes them different? And how do pro teams take advantage of each map to gain an advantage in the game? I used to think none of this made that big of a deal in matchmaking because nobody is playing the game properly anyway, but this makes it so if you just move around the map in the correct ways, it actually provides a massive amount of pressure. So for example, on a map like Split, most of the time your controller is going to smoke vents because this is what feels natural. By smoking vents, you could scale up mid safely and then pressure into B Heaven. But the issue with this is that smoking vents doesn't ever really deal with the issue of a player in vents. This player at any point in time could swing out of the smoke and eliminate your team, and if you guys try to push B Heaven, that will probably happen. However, if you smoke stairs, it's actually much much better. This way you could keep all of your gunfights in front of you, and you could force the Vents player to fall back into A Heaven, separating the defense and giving your team a massive advantage in the round. Or for example, on Haven, A lobby and short are pretty important areas to control. The goal for defense is normally to get a jet posted up in A lobby so that they can rotate players off of A to stack other parts of the map. The goal for offense is to deny the defenders this space and try to insert a player in short so that they can listen for rotates and potentially get a lurk off later in the round. However, most teams just completely misplay this map and will try to force their way into A immediately at the start of the round. You don't need to book it into sight everywhere that you go. It's okay to play the map. Once you take a short control, go back and re-clear mid and then feel out the round. Decide where you want to go later. We currently have courses for how to abuse Bind, Ascent, and Lotus on our website if you're looking for cheat codes on those maps as well, but basically figure out how the maps work and just try your best to make decisions in line with that philosophy. Most often, it will pay off. This is also important to keep in mind because of tip number 12. Your teammates don't know what they're doing. This is important to recognize because they're going to often say things that don't make any sense. You'll be playing on Ascent and your teammates will just keep rushing it down B or A every single round, completely ignoring the middle of the map. And if you watch our Ascent course, you'll know that the middle of the map is pretty important. Or on your first full buy round, your team will just want to spread out and wander around solo, losing their gunfights. They'll pop a surrender vote at 0-4 and try to force up after losing the pistol every time. Sure, there's something to be said about working with your teammates and how it's better to make the wrong decisions together than the right decision alone. Except that's not always true. You need to learn the fundamentals and then practice them in game. Your teammates likely don't even know what the fundamentals are, so you need to guide them. They'll try to constantly call bad strats, so it's your job to steer them in the right direction. For what it's worth, by the way, your opponents don't know what they're doing either. In this regard, people will often say disrespect your opponents until they earn your respect. Basically, just because something is technically the wrong decision, if it's working and you're getting value out of it, go for it. If your opponents don't know how to punish it, that's their problem. Take the free win. Speaking of punishing mistakes, it's a lot easier to do if you know how each agent works. We're under the belief that it's best to just try to play 1 or 2 agents while climbing, just so that you can really build up agent mastery. But we've heard players say things like, I can't play smokes countless times, and this is actually a massive issue. By knowing how each agent is played, you can better coordinate with your teammates and make plays that you know are possible due to the agent knowledge that you have. If I play a lot of breach and I try to pick up jet, the moment I have a breach on my team, I'm going to start calling for all of the breach utility that I would normally use. Stun here, flash here. If I play a lot of omen, when I have an omen on my team, I'm going to know where to request blinds from him or call where I want smokes. It's not like you need 100 hours on every agent, but 3 to 4 games in Swift play can be nice that you know how each agent works. I can't tell you how many times I've had teammates ask me when I'm playing Astra to cancel my smokes. It just screams that they have never played Astra in their life. You can't just cancel the smoke at any time. The recall is a completely separate ability. Main 1 or 2 agents, but learn how they all work. It will help you a ton in the long run. Tip number 14 is never back down, never what? Never give up. Don't surrender. This game is based on momentum and you can easily come back from a 3-9 half. One of the biggest complaints about Valorant Pro Play is how teams can run away with the game really quickly with the way the economy functions. You win a pistol round, your opponent is on eco round 2. You win round 2, they buy guns round 3. If you manage to win round 3, they will be on eco again round 4. You win round 4, they'll be on buy round again 5, but if you already are up 4 rounds and really only one of them had a rifle, that's crazy. You're a third of the way to winning the game, and there's only been 1 real gun round. This isn't even factoring in abilities, which can absolutely be game-changing. Valorant matches can snowball so fast. Just don't give up. We want to mention, by the way, that we do understand the struggle in some of these matches. Sometimes you feel like you're playing against a Smurf, and they're just completely running over the game. There's a pretty big smurfing problem in Valorant, and playing against a player who is significantly better than you is never fun. I do think there's a really clear misunderstanding in the community, though, with the phrase, you can learn from Smurfs, so I wanted to clear that up. For full disclosure, we used to do smurfing content and we don't really anymore. It's not really some moral stance for us. If we felt like we could provide users high value from doing it, we probably would, since at the end of the day, our goal is to help users climb, not to be your best friend. We have a full series showcasing how to carry as controller in low elo, which has gotten fantastic reviews from users on our website. But after we've done it once, it doesn't really make sense to do it again. And I know that half the people listening to this have already tuned out and are immediately having an emotional response to this. But for the other half, just hear me out for a second. When you're playing versus a Smurf, they're probably going to win every single gunfight, regardless of what they do. Your goal isn't to learn from the things that they are doing. It's possible they're actually taking really bad gunfights and just getting away with it because they have better aim. The way you want to learn when you're playing against a Smurf is developing strategies to beat them. You need to work the problem. Odds are that you won't beat them, but even if you're able to get out 3 or 4 rounds, that's still really cool. People say that you learn the most from playing against players who are better than you, and the reason for that is because players who are better than you will punish you more often often for the mistakes that you make. And when you get punished for the mistakes that you make, you're forced to adapt your approach. That's how you get better from playing against Smurfs. Don't copy what they're doing. Think about what they're doing and how you can punish them for it. More often than not, this is going to be by always fighting them with teammates, which is actually just fundamentally correct anyway. With all the discussion around smurfing, I think it's really important to understand this because it's not a problem that's going away. There's no magical fix for Smurfs. Players are always going to cheat the system. And sure, maybe creators stop making smurfing content and the problem diminishes slightly, but you'll always see Smurfs in competitive games. I know this isn't fun to hear, but it's just the truth. Keeping this in mind, you have two options. You can either cry about it when you get a Smurf in your match and immediately chalk it up as a loss and then complain below YouTube videos. Or you can try your best to adapt, still accepting that the game is probably a loss, but also recognizing it's something out of your power and that you're trying to make the most of the situation. This is also really important because it's not like as you climb, smurfing becomes less of an issue. You'll still get Radiant players absolutely trashing on you in Immortal lobbies all of the time. It's a bit different at this rank because everybody has the ability to aim decently well, but it's still not exactly the most fun thing in the world. The best way to deal with these players is to be a lot more coordinated with your trades and utility. You don't want to give them a chance to take a 1v1 gunfight because you know they're going to win it. So you gather info on their location, and when you locate them, you make sure that any fight that you take, they are sure to get traded out immediately afterwards. Think about it this way. In these pro tournaments that you watch, players don't really miss. If nobody misses, you can't let them have the opportunity to take 1v1 fights because they'll easily mop up 5 1v1s if they are given the chance. You need to use utility and man advantage to find kills at a pro level, otherwise you will just lose. Once you start to avoid giving these players 1v1s, your life will become a lot easier. This isn't the most satisfying solution or thing to hear, but it's the only realistic one that you can apply right now. This next one is a bit harder to grasp for a lot of players though, but for tip 16, when in doubt, double up with a teammate. To keep it simple, the whole game is about trades and number advantage. Whenever possible, you want to take gunfights with teammates, but especially on defense, everyone loves to split up. They have one player cover each choke point, and they nearly never fight together. Instead, try to take advantage of Sentinel utility to cover one choke point so that you can use your teammates to fight the other. Or even just smoke off an entrance. Most of the time, people won't just walk through a smoke without using any form of utility, so you can use that time to group up with a teammate and fight. Especially on maps like Bind, this is essential. Stop trying to hold down a whole push alone. You're just going to get ran over. The next tip works really well with all of the other things we mentioned. Abuse audio circles, flank when there are 5 players on the map. For tip number 17, you'll want to play close to spawn barriers at the start of rounds. The main purpose for this is that you will get immediately involved in the action. Too many times when we're watching low elo replays, we'll see players sitting far back and rotating towards site only to have all of their teammates die and be in a 1v5. Don't get us wrong, there are times where playing next to spawn barriers isn't always the best thing in the world, but just as a general habit, if you're in low elo and struggling to have an impact, this is a great way to put yourself into the action. The next tip is for players who are really looking to climb though. I'm talking to all you tilt queuers out there. I get it. You're winning a lot. You want to keep going. But in situations where you lose 2 games in a row, just stop. Especially if one of the losses was incredibly tilting. Climbing for most players is not a sprint, it is a marathon. Improve bit by bit and make sure each game is as high quality as it can be. Also, have fun. If you're playing more than 3 or 4 games in a session anyway, you're going to start experiencing some fatigue and playing worse. Nobody's playing at the top of their game after hours of playing, so just pace yourself. Play a few games a day, win them, and then stop while you're ahead. Quitting after 2 losses in a row will prevent you from tilt queuing and throwing all of your RR in one day. Number 19 is pretty obvious, but it's also important to remember. It takes a significant amount of playtime to climb in Valorant. You've got to play the game, hands down. There's no solution for that. Each match takes 30 minutes minimum. You're probably going to gain around 20 RR a game, and assuming you're climbing fast, the most that you're going to win is probably around 60% of your games. Not sure if my math checks out here, but this means that for you to climb 100 RR, it will probably take you around 25 matches. I think my math's right there. So that comes out to around 12.5 hours of gameplay just to climb one division. That's not horrible. Keep in mind, sometimes it'll be longer because of loss streaks, or sometimes it will be shorter because of win streaks. You could climb 100 RR in 3 hours if you're stomping every single match, but on average, it's gonna take a bit. We get countless amounts of players in Discord asking why they're so inconsistent, but the reality is they just don't play enough. 55% win rate is climbing pretty handedly. You're doing great. You just gotta keep playing. Finally though, moving towards our last tip, mute players quickly. I mentioned this tip so frequently, I probably mentioned it in the last video. You are not forced to put up with any level of harassment or hate just because you queued into a random lobby with some loser who's going to make you feel bad for your Valorant gameplay. I'm an immortal and I mute players very quickly for a variety of reasons. I'm not even kidding, sometimes I mute players because I don't like their tone of voice. Just because if somebody is annoying you, you're likely going to play worse. I would much prefer that I can hear myself think than I hear my teammates' mediocre comms. You are not playing with pro players who are going to be communicating effectively anyway. Don't subject yourself to people who are going to make you feel bad just because they might say something useful. You're lying to yourself if you think this is the case. I know it feels true. It's a team game and the idea of not being able to work with your team sounds counterproductive. But the reality is that in matchmaking, your teammates aren't going to be very good and relying on them can actually hold you back. Instead, learn to read your teammates' body language and look at the map often. By looking at the map, you'll pick up on information that your teammates probably won't call out anyways, and by reading your teammates' body language, you can more easily figure out how you can play around them even without comms. This will help make you a better player and in turn just make the game much more enjoyable. Who knows too? Maybe if players start getting muted more often for being assholes, they will think again before going off on their teammates. Alright though guys, before we wrap this up, let me tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and we think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing that you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered you that. Not us though. We offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well in fact that we are able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium Valorant guides on the internet. We add new courses every month. With over 1,000 Valorant guides curated into over 50 courses, no one can compare. We also have a direct line of communication with subscribers in our Discord so that you can get connected immediately to some of the best players in the game who will respond to all of your questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's going to be all for this one today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.